I have a ton of molding that I need to paint, as well as a couple of other projects, and I really want to use my paint sprayer. The problem is this gets overspray all over the garage, and I want to help make sure that dust doesn't get into what I'm painting or finishing. To help me with that, I'm going to build a paint booth that is super easy to take down and put up. It has positive pressure to reduce dust and has a ton of other awesome features. The material for the frame I'm going to go with is PVC. It's cheap, it's easy to use, it collapses, and it's not too heavy. The dimensions are going to be 10 feet long, 7 feet wide, and 7 feet tall. Now, I think the 10 feet long is really important because it allows you to put 8-foot molding in there, and a lot of other sheet goods come in 8 feet. The 7x7 is for optimal use of the material because we're going to need 13 pieces of PVC. You could definitely make it taller or wider, but then you're going to need more than 13 because we're going to use those offcuts to help us build more of the frame. For the joining pieces, we're going to use 8 of these corner brackets that I got off of Amazon. I'll have a link for everything down in the description below. Then we're also going to need 10 of the T's. You can buy that in a pack. I recommend getting them so that they line up in height. That's just more convenient. Sometimes they come a little bit smaller. And that's okay too. This doesn't have to be perfect in the lengths because everything should fit together and we'll have a little bit of leeway. When you're cutting the PVC, I like to leave it 1 inch longer than what you need in between the 2 adapters. That allows ½ an inch into the adapters. I find that that's a good amount in that it's still easy enough to pull apart, but not so little that it loosens and comes out if you jiggle the whole thing. Now, if you don't want to figure out all the dimensions for building this, I sell some plans on my website and also on Etsy. It'll save you time and trouble and really help support the channel. For cutting the PVC, you can use a PVC cutter, hacksaw, the twirly cutter. I call it a pipe cutter. Let me know down in the descriptions what that's actually called. But I also think that the miter saw is actually the best one to use because you can set up a stop and get repeatable cuts. Now, I recommend cutting all the pieces except leaving the 36 to 38 inch one. I think in the plans it's 37.5 inches. Leave that one for last. What you can do is you can put together the bottom long pieces, then lay out the other portions, measure off of that, and then 1 extra inch, and that will help you get pretty much exactly the same distance for the top and the bottom. You don't have to do it. For me, I wrote 37.5 inches in the plans, and that's what it worked out to, but that'll help just if there's any inaccuracies. That's a good sanity check to see if everything's lining up right. Putting it together goes pretty straightforward. My recommendation is to do the base first, then you can put in each of the 6 side portions, and then just build it up piece by piece as you're going around. Now we're ready for the plastic. This has ended up 1 inch short of 10 feet, which is exactly what I wanted. So we're going to take the plastic, drape it over the top and down the sides, and then tuck it in any excess underneath. There should be a couple of inches of excess there, so try to center it up. Then we can use some tape. I'm going to use painter's tape because it's not super sticky, and try to pull that taut. So just put the tape on the edges, pull it in tight, and have it in place. Then we're going to take the second piece of plastic and we're going to cut off pieces for these 2 ends and then put those into place. And then we're going to grab the tape for taping it all together. In this case, I'm going to use red tuck tape. It's the stickiest tape that I know of and holds really good onto plastic. I haven't found that packing tape works very well, or even duct tape often will degrade, or sometimes it doesn't stick permanently. So I like the tuck tape. If you have other tape that you recommend, let me know down in the description. With everything taped up, we could stop here if your goal was more of like a containment in case of a zombie apocalypse. But in our case, because we want to go in and out for painting, we're going to need to put a door in here. The easiest way for doing the door, I think, is a zipper system. I really like Zipper Wall brand, but any of them I think are fine. I like the heavy duty ones. And in this case, I want to come in about 1 foot so I can zip up on both sides. That'll give me about a 5-foot opening. So that means I could bring in tables, dressers, just big projects that I might be working on in the future. With the door open, you can just slide it up on top and you have a nice big opening for putting stuff in and out. I also came in and removed that blue tape that I had there earlier. And then also I trimmed, so there's only about 6 inches on the bottom side of the tent. That's useful so that you can just have the frame set up with the door open, then you can just slide the plastic over it. So it makes it really easy and convenient to set up. If you want to leave the tent like this and just use it for overspray protection, that's great. You can leave the door open, put in the stuff on the bottom if you want, that extra piece of plastic that we cut, or throw some tarps down there, and that'll really help to control the overspray. But if we add an exhaust fan, we can do a lot better in controlling dust of just fully coming in. Now you'll still get dust if we're just doing exhaust, but it won't be as bad. And then also the overspray that's in the tent is going to get vented out. Now most people will use a box fan and a filter, and I think that that's fine, although there is some risk of fire. But in my case, I already have an explosion-proof fan, so I'm going to be using that. For the exhaust fan, I slid the fan up against the plastic, and then I cut a hole in it around 1 to 2 inches smaller than the size of the fan. With the fan turned on, you can then come in and put the filter, and the air pressure is going to hold it in place. You don't have to use an explosion-proof one like I did. A box fan will also hold that filter in place. Now, if you only have one fan, you can definitely use this pull configuration, but I think it's actually a lot better to have it in a push configuration where you have positive pressure in the tent. If you seal it up and then you're blowing air into it, you're going to be pushing dust that's in here out and not sucking dust in, and that's going to have a cleaner workspace. I also think it's better to have the fan up top when you're doing that, so you're blowing air down into the tent, because there's going to be less dust up high than there is necessarily on the ground. If you are just using one fan though, and you've hooked it up top, you can just cut a hole in there, tape up around it so it has a place to sit into, and that'll hold it so it doesn't fall off. If you find that the fan is sagging a little bit after you've put it up top, you can add a little bit of PVC glue on the stretcher portions to add a little bit more strength. You're actually going to want twice as much passive exhaust as you have input. So if it's one filter and fan for pulling in, you're going to want 2 filters for pushing out. Now, if you have 2 or more fans, this is where really the spray booth shines. You can have one fan pushing in and then one fan pushing out in the back. Then what you can do is on the output, you can adjust by putting a piece of paper or something in front of the vent, shift that around until you just start to get positive pressure on that tent. That way you're getting mostly laminar flow out, but you're still pushing out, which means you're not going to be getting dust in. Now in my case, I'm going to use my explosion-proof fan as my exhaust fan, so I'm going to use 2 box fans as my input because that fan is pretty powerful. This is the best of all the worlds of a spray booth, controlling dust and overspray. Now I know what you're thinking. This paint booth is super awesome, but it's so big. I can't leave this set up in my garage all the time. Well, you're in luck. The whole thing collapses down, so it's about 7 feet long, wraps up in a bundle. You can stick it in a corner and save it for your next project. Once you've built the spray booth and you need something to spray, definitely check out this video on making molding. It'll save you a ton of money, and if you spray it, you'll also save a ton of time. Thanks so much for watching, and take care.